Welcome to the press conference of IDFA 2024. It is a great pleasure to welcome everybody here and to start from saying a few words about our past year. We had a very special edition of IDFA in 2023, and that is to say that we found ourselves in the world, found ourselves part of the world, and we were faced with big questions, big challenges. We tried what felt at the time to be our best, and mistakes were made. We hurt many people. We tried and we kept on trying to deal with that in a responsible way. This was and still is our clear core of our policy, of our approach, is to keep on trying to do the best possible we can within and guided by the mission of this organization and the actual meaning of documentary film, of the art of documentary as it stood since it began a bit more than 100 years ago. We went through a very difficult process that we took very seriously, a process of introspection, of self-critique. We listened to the critique we received. We invited so many stakeholders to join us in a process of discussion, of debate. This includes our team. This includes filmmakers from everywhere, including many of the filmmakers who protested our choices last year. This includes people from all spectrums, from all sides of different political and social and artistic maps. We discussed with our partners in the Netherlands, our partners internationally, and we invited everybody who was critical to having a discussion. We also hosted here an international symposium in August where we shared these questions together with about 40 leaders of our field internationally. And we saw clearly that these questions, these challenges are not only local, they're not only ours, they are much more a global challenge. A challenge of a moment in history, in human experience, where suddenly the role of art, the place of culture in society and in human experience is deeply uncomfortable. Because art, culture, try to help us see what we do not see, and we sometimes don't want to see that. The discomfort that artistic work brings is part of the core value that it presents to humanity. And without that, something is missing. It is very easy to despair today and to fall into a cynical take. Because when we see what's happening in the world, we might feel like, so what are we doing? It is very difficult to see something that is better this year than it was last year and the year before. But still, there is this basic core faith that instead of this cynicism, we can actually push further, challenge ourselves, and try to make a difference by making things more complex, rather than simplifying them, in standing against such simplification. This is the value of a film festival that brings together voices from all around the world and shows it to a very wide audience, is to show everybody something that will cause a certain level of discomfort. We do believe in discomfort as a key part of moving forward. Now, one of the main ways we did this year, and probably the most visible, was the campaign of IDFA 2024, because we made a choice and we invited two brilliant artists from Amsterdam. These are Raoul Balai and Ihsan Farajaniya, two artists who do great work in the city for years and who were among the many who were critical of IDFA last year in our edition and with the choices we took with regards to what was happening in Gaza, that of course did not end by today. Unfortunately, it's much worse today. This experience was to make a clear statement. When we are criticized, when we are questioning whether what our choices, our decisions are right or wrong, we do not raise our fences. We do exactly the opposite. And when we defend or stand for discomfort in hearing what, in the social need for hearing what's not what we would like to hear, then we have to do this exercise ourselves too. To do this exercise ourselves too, we have to engage positively, seriously, in a collaborative way with the critique that we receive. We have to go through a serious process of discussion, debate, but even more importantly, of creation, of artistic creation. This process this year resulted in one of the most special campaigns IDFA has ever made. We are announcing IDFA this year with a campaign designed by Farajaniya and Balai. That is their critical letter to IDFA. That is their position towards cultural institutions. That is their own statement that we stand behind and support fully. I start with showing you the campaign of IDFA 2024, starting from the campaign's video.
At the border of my rage, I met a girl with a black horse and a flag. She gave me a passport to promised Westland. Now, I work as inclusion brand, a cheap sellout, normal life, complicit, just complicit. Are you?
I am deeply grateful to Raoul and Ihsan for accepting to engage with us, for welcoming this experience that started from discomfort on both sides and ended with a true partnership. To me, to us, this is the core of being a meaningful cultural contributor to life, to society, to political experience, is to come together and grow from disagreement into a place where, even if we disagree, we have sincere, deep respect to each other, we stand next to each other, we share the same core values. So, from here, we move on. It will be a roller coaster. This presentation will take you really, it will be long, I promise, because we have so much good this year, because it is a very special year. We have, we decided a few years back to marginalize statistics so that numbers are not anymore how we measure the importance of what we are doing. However, we did receive a record number of entries in every part of our work. We had more films sent to us from around the world than ever in the history of the festival. We had more projects entered for our IDFA markets than ever. And this makes me very confident in saying we have an outstanding program. we sometimes are struggling to be sure and confident which film should be where in our festival, which film can we show or not show. And this year we truly had a much more difficult process than usual because we found many more films we would love to show than we could. So, these films together will tell you about this world we live in. These films, one by one and all together, will speak of this discomfort that I started with, will show us a world that is truly in massive pain, will also show us how still people are fighting to carve out a place for hope. We will see every important topic in the world today in this presentation, in this program. You will see our choices and our positions as a team reflected in what we are going to show you and how we arrange it. And you will also be surprised by various angles that when you watch the films, you will feel, well, yeah, this is a priority of this age, but I never thought it is. And that is another way that documentary filmmakers and artists show us what we don't see, with discomfort. Now, I will leave you with my very dear colleague, Casper Sonnen, who will take us through the program of new media of DocLab. And here we start. Casper.
Thank you, Orwa, and good morning. Since 2007, a very long time ago, IDFA DocLab has been a program within IDFA known for its playfulness, moving freely between art, reality, and technology. And if you do your math, this year marks our 18th edition. So in human terms, DocLab can now officially be considered a grown-up. So it's time for a reality check. Over the years, we explored, embraced, conspired with, pushed back against various technological hype cycles, from interactive storytelling to virtual reality and artificial intelligence, to name but a few. We have seen exceptional new artists emerge and create amazing new art forms. But we've also seen how technology disrupted society, how it destroyed some of the most vulnerable and valuable parts of our physical world and our everyday human experience. Technology, just like reality, is not a game. And technology, just like games, is an integral part of reality itself. But that doesn't mean we don't have agency to choose how we use or not use technology. The reality we live in today, as mediated, unbelievable, and horrifying as it has become, is not a simulation. This year's DocLab is very much a reflection of that fact. The program brings us confronting, moving, groundbreaking experiences from all over the world, showing how documentary artists are successfully cutting through the fog, challenging the hype cycles of Silicon Valley, and sometimes even showing us fragile new paths forward. So let's dive in into what might be our most adventurous and definitely undisciplined program ever. Our three main program sections are digital storytelling, immersive nonfiction, and spotlight. And we start with digital storytelling, which brings together 11 projects in total this year. And while making the program, we had the pleasure to discover a number of artists exploring new media for the first time. And a great example of that is filmmaker Emmeline Coursier, who premieres Burn from Absence, an immersive visualization of the mysteries and gaps in her own undocumented family history, which is part of a collaboration with the Phi Center and ONX. But we also have new works by artists who've been shaping the interactive field for many years already, like Tamara Shugalu and her striking new AR installation, Ariza, Healing Ground. Another example of this is Future Botanica by Marcel van Brakel and Hazal Ertukan of Polymorph, a groundbreaking studio that is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, so they're even older. And they're doing that with a mesmerizing garden of living AI organisms presented in Droog, one of our new locations this year. AI has been a big part of IDFA DocLab for many years, but this year's festival is seeing more projects than ever, exploring and challenging AI as a tool for co-creation. Sorry. And that very much includes the film program, but more on that later. Highlights within digital storytelling include the wonderfully intimate video installation Sincerely Victor Pike, of which we're also presenting a small full dome version in the Artis Planetarium. Sean Hannon's musical attempt to save a dying language in You Can Sing Me On My Way. And Drift, an open world podcast generating a climate future set in the year 2500 that you can experience live throughout the festival. Where Drift reshapes what a podcast can be, Jisoo Lim reshapes what video games can be in the very human Senna and their garden. Meanwhile, in Tongo Sundi, Ruben Kabenda translates 2D animation into what is becoming an immersive physical installation, and Felix Hayes and Ben West bring us a dictionary without words, a thought-provoking testament of the visual dataset Google has been reducing our reality to. Bless you, by the way. And then on the more collective, the more physical level, with Ancestors, Staya Halama and his smartphone orchestra use simple phones in our pockets to effectively turn groups of strangers into one giant awkward family. And finally, in the digital storytelling competition, we have Pega Tabasinijad, an amazing visual artist that we didn't know before, who is taking video game mechanics into public spaces, creating a deceptively simple but powerful intervention through performance video art. Which brings us to the immersive nonfiction competition. Welcome to the latecomers. While AI seems to have stolen some of the thunder that VR once had, in terms of being the next big thing, whatever that means, the 10 projects selected for the immersive nonfiction competition reveal how spatial and sensory arts have actually become more real than ever, both artistically and in terms of appealing to and reaching actual audiences, which is also reflected in our research that we're doing this year with MIT, which is focusing around distribution. As such, we are honored to present some of the most amazing new in-headset experiences this year, such as the awe-inspiring Ancestral Secret VR from Chile, Vincent Abert's intense and transformative Walking Alone Text You When I'm Home, as well as the hypnotic 360 experience Rapture 2 Portal by Elisa Berger. Going beyond the headset by itself, we see immersive installations, such as the Iranian Speechless Witness of a Wandering Tree, one of our various commissioned projects this year, as well as Romance, which is a project we're very much looking forward to sharing with our audience, as is a delightfully awkward virtual blind date experience for two people at the same time. Another example of a more social experience is the wonderful South African social VR experience, Dollhouse for Queer Imaginaries, of which we will also be presenting a live full dome presentation in collaboration with We Make VR and the Artis Planetarium. Also presented during our full dome screenings is the full dome premiere of Wenyi Heshe's Apocalyptic Limbophobia, a mesmerizing thing to see. And over at our exhibition in Brakke Grond, we are honored to present the heartbreakingly beautiful audio installation The Liminal by Ala Alminawi. This is a co-commission, part of our annual Film Fund DocLab grant, which Ala is currently trying to finish with his team working in between Amsterdam and Beirut, but it's looking very well so far. We conclude this competition with two of the most physical experiences this year. First, the performance installation Me a Depiction, for which Lisa Schamley ruthlessly decided to put herself physically on display at various moments throughout the festival. And another very physical experience, but in a completely different way, Drinking Brecht, an automated laboratory performance, presented as a hidden speakeasy somewhere inside the exhibition, where you are invited to create and drink a delicious DNA cocktail that could potentially disrupt your perception of a famous male theater maker. Breaking through the fourth wall of this section, we go to the DocLab Spotlight program, the final section we present. where we reveal some of the most loved and noteworthy projects traveling on the circuit this year. Among the projects in this program, we have some amazing VR and full dome experiences by relative newcomers to the field that have been emerging this year. But we also welcome back the Flemish theatre group Ontroerend Goed, who will be performing 2 shows of Thanks for Being Here as part of a collaboration with Brakke Grond. And there's also AI and Me, an installation that has crowds lining up from festival to festival, and Impulse, Playing with Reality, which is Anagram's winner of this year's Venice Immersive. Ontroerend Goed and Anagram and various other artists will also be testing new prototypes of works that they are still developing, testing with our audiences, testing within the community, bringing together the field in the festival to also make the first steps towards next year's program or next year's discoveries. We're doing this as part of a new initiative called the DocLab Playroom. And more about that, our exhibition, the planetarium, the industry events can all be found online very soon. But if you can't wait, do reach out to Michel Langendijk, our press officer. On behalf of Jenny Tuovinen, our programmer Nina van Doren, and our new associate programmer Toby Coffey, as well as the entire DocLab team, we want to thank all program advisors and all the artists who have been sharing their work with us. And of course, a huge thank you as well to some of our favorite logos in the field. Orwa, back to you.
Thank you, Caspar. It's truly exciting what you're promising with this year's DocLab. Now I will move on with the roller coaster continuing as promised. Our guest of honor this year, as previously announced, is Johan Grimon-Prez. Johan Grimon-Prez is one exceptional artist / filmmaker whose work has always been controversial, always been courageous, both politically and artistically. He is a perfect fit for a time like this. He does not shy away and never shied away from controversy, from difficult questions, and his filmography that we are celebrating with a retrospective shows that very clearly. I think it's very difficult to walk quickly through the filmography of Grimon-Prez. I invite you to dive into it because I think his contribution to film is truly outstanding. We are doing a big retrospective. We can see his different obsessions or fascinations over the years through different films, from his most famous work, Dial History, in 1997, where he examines the history of hijacking airplanes, all the way to films such as his work on Hitchcock. In Hitchcock Didn't Have a Belly Button. We go to films like, for example, where is it? Shadow World, yeah, in 2016. In Shadow World, Grimon-Prez made his own way of examining illegal arms trade globally. And then we go to his most recent film, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, which won multiple awards since it premiered earlier this year. And then we, as usual, invited Johan to give us his top 10 films of all time. And being who he is, he absolutely rejected our proposal and came up with his own way that he liked to call the top 100. So don't be fooled by the fact that there are 10 films in front of us now on the list. What he is doing is that he is carrying us on what he called 5 teams. There are 5 different journeys. Each one of these journeys, he is carrying us with him into the process that created one of his major films. And when he carries us there in his own words, he described this as the film is the tip of the iceberg. So what we are doing actually is that we're allowed a dive to see what's the big part of the iceberg that is underwater. And this way he is showing us films, he is giving multiple talks, and he is also sharing with us many clips, music videos, TV commercials that shaped his research and his love for film, but also the process of these different obsessions that created his films as well as his books and so on. One of these parts or icebergs of Johan Clément Pres is about Palestine. And here he invites Mohanad Yaqoubi, the Palestinian filmmaker, to share his film Off Frame and to have a discussion with him and Reem Shille, the Palestinian scholar and writer. And then it will also include showing the film of the Japanese Red Army, Declaration of World War. You can see these in connection with his film Dial History. Other films will draw a different picture, and we will be traveling with Johan Clément Pres from one narrative to the other. It is a bit like an artist's periods of his career, of his life, that he was searching for different things in different times. When we want to go and see what made him make his arm trade film, Shadow World, he will take us into another journey. A lot is to wait for in what Clément Pres is sharing very generously with us. He will be very engaged in the program. He will be on stage often with his laptop, sharing clips and talking to us. Then, this year we only have one clear focus program, a curated program that is the beginning of a new program section or a new way of arranging our curated programming. The title is Dead Angle. Dead Angle is a program that will go over multiple years. And this year we start from the dead angle that is called Borders. Borders in the direct sense of a physical line that splits two countries. And then in every possible way of understanding what is border, what does it mean, how does it affect our lives, and what does it stand for. In this lineup, about which you can read a lot soon on our website, in our publications, there are outstanding new films, some of the best films of the year, such as The Landscape and the Fury of Nicole Vögle, such as The Battle of Lakipia. But then there are also some masterpieces of the questioning of borders. This would include Tig O'Sullivan's film The Great Wall. This is a film that studies the borders of a fortress Europe. A film that makes all the science fiction, like the work of Alfonso Cuarón, for example, sound very plausible. We have The Diary of a Sky of Lawrence Abu Hamdan, who is a very well-known artist and who is working on the theme of living in Lebanon, in Beirut, and having the air the sky on top of you always as a space for Israeli aircrafts going back and forth all the time freely. This experience connects with the film of Khaled Jarrar, Palestinian artist and filmmakers, Infiltrators, which is a film on trying to live in Jerusalem. It's difficult, by the way. More and more, El Mar Lamar is a masterpiece that takes us to the desert that people have to cross in order to make it to the promised land of the USA from Latin America. Here we will also be showing Route 181, the masterpiece of Michel Khleifi and Eyal Sivan. It's one of the greatest films ever made about the conflict, about Palestine-Israel. It is the most recognizable and the iconic collaboration between a filmmaker from Palestine and a filmmaker from Israel. In many ways, this is a film that stands against the question of simplified identity. This is a film that says that it is not about our heritage, that our political and ethical position is. It is about our true imagination of the future and our serious take on today, that we come together and work In this film, Khleifi and Sivan walk along the line of separation, the line of division of 1947, and try to see what happens there today. They meet people from every possible walk of life on the way. And there are so many things still to say. The interview film of Omar Amiralai with the great playwright, late playwright Sadallah Wannous. There we will meet the narrative, the way that people in the Arab world know the history of Palestine and Israel, which is the other narrative that sounds today like a missing part of the story. It is one of the greatest films on the conflict ever to imagine. Yolande Zauberman made her beautiful film a few years after that, and that is How Would You Have Sex with an Arab? Her film examines the conflict in the most complex way, through looking at it as a bodily question first and foremost. On the border, we will go to Africa, particularly to Niger, where we will see the efforts of the European Union to train local police and government to stop refugees from getting all the way to Europe. We will spend some very meaningful time there, seeing how that collapsed recently, that effort. We will also be going to see Harun Farouki, a much missed great filmmaker who will be part of our program with his film Respite, looking back at another border that is between the Netherlands and Germany. Another key program of the year is our spotlight on Cuba. Cuba is, we can say, a liminal island that stands in between so many different things. Cuba is a symbol for revolution, and Cuba is a symbol for dictatorship. Cuba is aspired, is seen as a dream come true for many, and it also is seen as a nightmare for people. There is so much to think about the minute we say the word Cuba, and this rich history of Cuba we are just reflecting in a program that will never do justice to the island and its people. But it starts with a retrospective of Sara Gomez. Sara Gomez, who passed at the age of 31 a long time ago, made a number of brilliant films that we will be showing. This is not all of her filmography, but many of it. She was the very first Afro-Cuban filmmaker to make films on the island, and her film work inspires many new filmmakers today. She is outstanding in her experience. She is a true Cuban revolutionary whose films were banned often by the Cuban Revolution. Following Sara Gomez, we will meet a unique, a singular experience or experiment in world cinema in the past 37 years, and that is the film school in Cuba called EICTV. This film school is very special because it's an international film school where filmmakers come from all around the world and where the teaching of film happens in a very unique way. It is in a way an island of freedom in the middle of this island that is not so free, to say the least. We will be showing a selection of films from the students of this school over recent years. We're doing this in collaboration with the school's documentary department, and we will have some of these wonderful filmmakers take part in a talk after this program is screened, so that we discover this complexity that is Cuba today. I will not go into details about Best of Fests. This is our largest program section. It's already announced a while back. You can easily go to our website, examine what's there. This is where you can find all of the outstanding films of the year. This is what you will find, where you will find the films that drew attention in different festivals, in different contexts. some of the year's most celebrated films are here. I truly encourage you to take a look. This is the harvest of the best of the best. And I will move to special screenings, which is our window to celebrate works that fall off from all of the other sections, but we still believe are very important to look at. This year, the great Sergei Parajanov's work, that is The Color of Pomegranate, has been restored again in a perfect new copy, new print. But with that, more and more filmmakers are visiting the great artist's story or life experience. So we will be having a special celebration of The Color of Pomegranate that comes with 2 documentary films that look at Parajanov and at the film and what's the context around them. This is a very special program. I think people who love cinema and know the history of cinema would recognize Parajanov's unparalleled, incomparable place in its history, but also everybody who doesn't know Parajanov needs to come with an open heart and give this time to one of the greatest artists who walked this earth. Now, Signed is the place where the programmers of IDFA look at the new films made by filmmakers who we believe, very subjectively, together, that are filmmakers with a very special touch, with a stylistic or artistic approach that is recognizable, that is strong, that stands the test of time. So this is, in a way, one of the regularly more guaranteeable experiences to look up these films. Here we will see, it's quite a journey around the world. Here you can see films that are going everywhere around the world today, like Petra Costa's Apocalypse in the Tropics, looking at the recent political upheavals in Brazil. Also the same goes for At This Moment in the Nation's Sky of Sandra Kogut. These 2 films together can really take you on a journey to Brazil and take us to the core of the political experience of the country in the past 2 years. Here you can see Dahomey, the big winner of the Golden Bear in Berlinale this year. It is the film of Mati Diop that looks at the looting of cultural heritage from Africa in one of the most innovative and risky artistic approaches possible. Here we can see films like La Belle de Gaza of Yolande Zauberman. We can see the 2 new parts of Nicolas Philibbert's trilogy about mental health institutions in France. We can see Viktor Kosakovsky's brilliant film Architecton. Furthermore, there's a lot to say, but we will have Claire Simon's new film Elementary. We will have a new film on Brian Eno with the title Eno. It's a film that involves a very special use of artificial intelligence. It is, in a way, a film that is different with every screening. So much more Raoul Peck, Sergei Loznitsa's new film, but then we will also celebrate Kamal El-Jafari, the brilliant Palestinian artist, with his new film, a Fidai film, that is going around the world everywhere this year, and looking at the history of how the archives, the images of Palestinian life were looted during the Israeli invasion of Beirut, 1982. In this section 2, we will see 2 new films, documentary films by Rado Jude. Rado Jude is one of the most celebrated art house filmmakers today, and his 2 new documentary films give us reason to have him with us and to have a very special talk with him about his filmography, about reality and fiction, about his very interesting, provocative, controversial, but truly very meaningful take on film industry and on the place of film in our lives. Furthermore, more films. we will be celebrating, we will have 2 films inside this year on the Beatles, but 2 very different films. So one by Kevin MacDonald on John and Yoko, and the other is from Andrzej Ujika, the master of archival film, who is looking, I will not tell you much, you can read a bit on the website, but I think watching the film is truly a treat. We will be watching Andres Fael in his new film on Riefenstahl, and in his new film we will learn what we never learned before about the story of Leni Riefenstahl after World War II, as she spent a lifetime trying to cover up for her work with Adolf Hitler. I am skipping so much, but I promise you it's all going to be very clear on the website. Paradox, as always, is our space dedicated to art film. Here, there are many brilliant films of the year. I already mentioned The Diary of Sky of Lawrence Abu Hamdan, but we're also going to be showing Being John Smith. John Smith's brilliant film that takes his name, John Smith, which is probably the least unique name one can have, as a starting point with his very witty, sharp, and truly brilliant artistic approach. Here we will watch Reel of Ole Sentsov. Sentsov's new film from the trenches in the war in Ukraine is truly a very special. Probably when we always talk about war documentary films, we use the word raw a lot. This is raw, and it will be difficult to call other films raw after you have watched this one. It truly is moving, very strong, but also stylistically very coherent. It Found Stage is our very special section that we're always proud of, because this is what I believe is part of the future of film, is film as an experience, film or the language of film when it intersects with other languages, with other arts. It is where performance arts come together with film in different ways. And here we have an outstanding list of 6 special It Found Stage shows, some of which are a performance with documentary material, and others are more intersecting with the program of DocLab, so using different technologies to come together as a uniquely coherent, different kind of a performance or a show. Now, we get to competitions. IDFA competition for youth documentary has been changing and developing over the past few years, gradually but steadily. Nikki Padidar, who's a brilliant filmmaker, has been programming this section or leading the effort of programming this section for 2 years now. Here, she led an effort to go even more into respecting the youth as an audience, into making sure that we never treat the youth as less or offer them a version of the world that is sterile or in a way cleaned up. This competition is actually 2 lineups, one that is aimed at audience between the ages of 9 and 12, and the other is for those over 13 years of age. It is a very interesting lineup that will carry our young ones in a true journey around the world, and it will hopefully challenge them a bit as they like. Now, we had a big year again with short documentary film. Last year we noted that shorts are on the rise globally, and that we can measure this by the amazing number of films that we received. It goes on, and short documentary film is a format that is very difficult to make because it has no funding, but more and more is being made. So there is something here about the format itself and the filmmakers behind it standing up and saying, it doesn't matter, we're still going to make it. This we respect, this we love, and what's new this year is that we truly have a number of world-renowned filmmakers as part of this competition lineup. These include, for example, a new film by Cao Guimarães from Brazil, a new film by Vitaly Mansky, and when we see such great, famous, accomplished filmmakers next to filmmakers whom we are meeting for the first time and celebrating this moment of finding them, finding their work, and getting to wait for their next also, it becomes even more exciting than usual as a lineup for a competition. On a quick note, we still have the cross-section awards. At IDFA, we have 3 awards with 3 separate juries that watch films not in one lineup or section of the festival, but handpicked by our programmers throughout the entire lineup of films from whatever part of the festival they are screened. First one is our award for Best Dutch Film, to celebrate the films of the Netherlands. And this is a good year for Dutch film in quality. It is truly remarkably not a big year in terms of quantity. So we have very exceptionally good Dutch films, but not as many as usual. And then we have the Beelden Geluid IDFA Reframe Award. This remains to be one of the most particular or special things about our program, is that we celebrate reframing archives. This is our award that celebrates the creative use of archival material in a film. The third, and maybe the closest to the ambitions and the mission of IDFA, is the award for Best Feature Film. And here we're always celebrating the first long documentary film of a filmmaker. And this year, again, it's an outstanding lineup. Now, we get to the announcement of the day with our premiere sections. Frontlight is where we see films that seek the truth, films that are mostly topic or subject driven, looking at what's happening around us. Frontlight lineup this year includes the 1957 transcripts of Ayelet Heller, an exceptional film that introduces us to recently released archives of a massacre in the village of Kafr Qasim, in Palestinian village Kafr Qasim in 1957, where the civilian farmers of this village were mass murdered on one evening that remained to be a deep wound in the collective memory of Palestinians. In here, we will see films like Blowing in the Wind. Filmmaker Iyad El-Jaroud is taking us again, for a second time, into his memory and the hard drives of the material he filmed during the major crackdown on the Syrian revolution, where he is showing us a hands-on, very intimate take on the process of radicalization, on the way that under so much pressure, good people start to experience a division. They start to step aside from each other, and war starts to be a reality. And then also revolution starts to fail. In many good films here, I must say, that we can talk about, but I would say, for example, in Tripoli, A Tale of Three Cities, Raed Rafi'i is introducing us to the experience of being queer in Tripoli, Lebanon, under such situation. Shot the Voice of Freedom by Zainab Intizar is truly an unprecedented, direct, immersive experience of the daily lives of women activists under Taliban in Afghanistan. And some of these films, I'm sure, will cause very interesting debates. These include the film Undercover Exposing the Far Right by Havana Marking. This is an exceptional work looking at how extreme right-wing movements are bringing back very effectively the notion of eugenics, and through this causing an unprecedented amount of harm. But there are those outstanding activists who take huge risks to study that, expose it, and tell us about what's happening there. In the Shadow Scholars, we will have to discover a phenomenon that is bewildering, which is that in Africa, there is a shocking number of brilliant academics who have been writing the homeworks of Western university students for years and years for money online, and they get no credit for that, of course, while more and more corruption is hidden in the world of academia in the West. Much more to say, but I will move on to Luminous. Luminous is our program where we can see films that are so much more experiential. Here we will go from character-driven films to personal essays, different forms that are so much more experiential than subject-driven. We will go to a prison in Egypt, in Abu Zabal 89. We will go to the history of the communist or the socialist youth conferences or festivals in Bright Future, an exceptional piece of archival documentary filmmaking. Here we will see The Jacket is a film from Lebanon with a brilliant Palestinian refugee theater maker. Neshoma is the new film of Sandra Behrens that will carry us in a beautiful archival journey through the experience of the Jewish community of Amsterdam before the war, during the war, and up until right after the war. A beautiful piece that is in some way stylistically connected or can be seen as a continuity to her previous film, They Call Me Babu, but is also very different. In Luminous, we will see Personal, a very engaging, riveting time that we will spend with the workers behind the scenes in a hotel in Tyrol, where we will not even see the visitors or the guests in the hotel. We will spend the time with the workers behind the scenes, cleaning behind them, organizing everything. The people who are invisible in a fancy hotel will be our friends for the duration. It is a journey in place, but a journey or a story of current immigration realities of Europe. I will move on, but I promise you that here there's a wealth of films to discover, to experience, and I apologize to the filmmakers whose films I am moving on and not stopping at. Your films will be highlighted on the website, I promise. Now, Envision competition was a bet when we launched it a few years back. We thought that documentary filmmaking is going in two different currents, two different directions. One that is more traditional, making great films that are either observational or investigative, but they are films that examine and develop well-known formats or well-known documentary genres and stick to them in a conventional way, yet become unique in the way they are made. But that is only one side that maybe is usually considered more market-friendly, more popular. But there is another wave that is as big, and that is a wave of artist filmmakers who do not want to make films as we would expect them to do, who want to try and really invent what filmmaking means to them. This is a kind of filmmaking that involves much less money. and that causes it to be much more free. Envision is the lineup of films like that, of films that try to truly invent its own language, their own language. And here I will begin with a film by Miguel Calderón. Miguel Calderón is a very well-known, a very famous artist in Mexico. And here he tells us a story of the relationship between money and art, and the corruption, the relationship between money, corruption, government, and the independent artist. It is Calderón walking a very thin line. He is taking the challenge to heart. He is in his film with his friend / corrupt / financier. It is a hybrid film that is fully documentary in its core, but also relies on reenactment in a way that's going to be very difficult to discern for the viewer. Bestiari herbaria lapidaris. Massimo Danolfi and Martina Parenti are coming back with their new film that is truly a journey. It is a film that looks at the image, the history of how we saw animals, plants, and stone through the way we try to study them, through film, through audio recording, and through writing. How did the world or humans try to organize and analyze and study the other parts of life on the planet? I think the photo, the still here, shows the beginning of what I'm talking about. It's a brilliant film that is truly very inventive in the way it approaches these archives and interviews. Cycle Mahesh is a first film from India. Here, we go back to a film during COVID-19. In COVID-19, everything stopped. And there was a poor worker in a factory in the city, 2,000 kilometers away from his home. And there was nothing he can do in this very unfriendly environment. He needed to go back home, but there were no buses, no trains, no transportation. So he takes his bike and he goes on a 2,000 kilometer journey to go back home despite all of this. And on this journey, he meets different people, he discovers different things, he gets to know himself maybe, and here, this is a different trip through India in a very particular moment, made with so much artistic freedom that, of course, the carrier of this is a fiction line of the story that is real, of this person who took the bike for 2,000 kilometers, but everything on the way is also made up of reality, of what is there on this way. The Fenfire is a very, very special film. This is Dutch artist Erik van Lieshout, and here he takes us to the south of the Netherlands, and there he is making his own new big artistic project, and with his artistic project, he's meeting people, the farmers, and the people who live in that countryside of the Netherlands, there in the most singular style of how he approaches them and how he carries himself very lightly in the most witty and sarcastic sense of life and existence. Erik van Lieshout introduces us to things that many might ignore or marginalize, and this is the very difficult experience of people living there. A Frauen Gone Mad, this is Lebanese artist Omar Mismar. Omar Mismar is inviting us in a very disciplined artistic approach to the bed in a Botox clinic in Beirut. There we will see what it is like, who does ask for a Botox injection in Beirut and why, what is life like when you have such continuous stress of bombing, of war, possible wars coming back and forth, of explosions, of a country that is always on a very hot tin. And then you can't really know if getting Botox is a form of resistance or is it a form of surrender. From Réunion, we have guarantee 100% Creole. I think it's a unique experience to see an artist, a filmmaker from Réunion, offering us a view or a portrait of his island, of Réunion, as a rich tapestry of different people, different cultural traditions, and different practices coming together and showing all of that from the viewpoint of an insider, not from the viewpoint of somebody without any sense of tourism or colonialism, but rather with profound love and an experience that is truly humbling and quite unique in its visual language. Ali Asghari, the Iranian filmmaker whose fiction work made a big stir last year, is here with us, offering an exceptional essay, more like a monologue. Imagine a filmmaker under so much pressure for the controversy about his previous film that spoke of pollution in Tehran, of the environmental disaster of that city. He is now stuck at home, and being stuck at home with all the reality and symbolism of that, he carries us through a monologue that is a deep, profound examination of what art is, what cinema is, but also of persecution, of exile, of the feeling of loneliness in the middle of such oppression. Wakero is a journey that also is hybrid, that is also very difficult to figure out here what is real and what is not, who is real and who is an actor, that takes us to the regions between Ecuador and Peru and introduces us to a history of artifacts, historical artifacts looting that is not colonial, but rather coming from a very difficult daily reality and poverty that comes from colonial reasons. So in a way here we are going with the Wakeros, who are the people who dig illegally for artifacts, historical archaeological artifacts, and with them we discover the history of these regions and what happened and what the Spanish conquistadors did to these regions, but also what the reality is. It's a kind of a beautifully hypnotic film. The style with which this film is made is very special, and it makes a great point of using 16mm, but also of not allowing us to know what is legal and what is illegal, who is real and who is an imposter. Now, from Brazil, Ana Ripper gives us Paradise. This is quite, to me, it was a very unique journey. I don't think I've seen much like this film before, because this is in many ways you can say this is a topic-driven or a subject-driven film. Paradise tries to examine life in Brazil today and the history that leads to it, that includes racism, slavery, colonialism, and a massive political challenge, homophobia, transphobia. But the film does that with the language of a stream of consciousness, with a very high rhythm, flow of ideas, interviews, images, and music, in a way that usually is avoided when you want to talk about such a serious topic. But overall, it becomes a truly emotional journey into this history, rather than merely being informative journey. Park takes place in a park in Taiwan. It is a very minimalist film that introduces us to the experience of Indonesian immigrants living on the island. I will not add much more because this is a film that truly needs to be experienced. We selected it within minutes, I think, after we watched it. From Switzerland, Eleonora Camizzi made Pictures in Mind. Camizzi is staging a necessary discussion with her father. It is a history, a family history that's quite a challenge, but a discussion is needed, connection is missing, and to do that, she creates this abstract space and invites her father to a shooting session that is actually the rediscovery of their relationship and their memory. From Cuba, we have Miguel Coyula's film, Chronicles of the Absurd. This is one of the most artistically courageous films I have seen this year. Coyula and his partner, his co-artist, being actress Lynn Cruz, have been getting on the nerves of the authorities in Cuba for years. And this translates into them not being allowed to make Coyula's big new project 10 years ago that should have been starring Lynn Cruz herself. This film is in a way a chronicle of making a fiction film over 10 years because every scene needs a whole plan because it's not allowed to be filmed. But this film itself is also not allowed to be made. And a camera is not allowed to be in the hand of Miguel Coyula. And actually, anybody who speaks to one of these two persons is called into interrogation because they are considered dangerous. So what they do is that they record a lot of the discussions and the interrogations and the encounters they have with authorities. And from these secret audio recordings, they knit a film where the image is what needs to be put there because a camera is not allowed. It is truly innovative, very courageous, and I'm very proud that we have them and the film with us. Now we get to the international competition. I hope you're still with me. And yeah. Aubery Edler takes us into Middle America, into a town where everything we discuss, all the polemics about what's happening in the USA, but maybe in the West in general, with right-wing and with the growth of a sense of censorship, with religion being brought back in a way that is controlling, for example, what books children should read in the school or not, the censorship of libraries and bookshelves in schools. All of this comes to become daily matters in this film, where we are looking at the daily lives of this town during the process of electing a board for the school, where all of these discussions are on the table and all of these people, normal people, are trying to do good, whether they believe that good means never telling the children that there is homosexuality, or whether they believe that good is to allow for freedom and freedom of opinion and expression and debate and discussion. All of these things that we discuss in a very theoretical level in our world are starting to become our daily lives in different places of the world. And here we are there in this small town that in a way summarizes all of that. This is the golden age of Camilla Lanetti, is one of 3 first films in our international competition. This is very special, and we're very happy that we have such brilliant first films that allow us to celebrate the works of a first-time feature-length filmmaker next to some of the most famous and accomplished filmmakers on the lineup. Here we are going to meet the character a once brilliant young woman, musician, trying to find her place in the world with so many dreams, who gets into a difficult relationship, gets pregnant, and gets stuck out of all of her dreams, crippled or paralyzed by reality, by the difficulty of being a young mother, a young single mother. And the film goes between the UK and Italy and carries us in the most intimate, observational way to this, probably one can say, universal experience of womanhood. Anna Riccardo Miranda made Green is the New Red. Here, with the obvious connotation of the title, we see a very strong essayistic tendency in a very serious investigative film. More than 2,000 environmental activists have been killed in Latin America over the past 20 years. We don't know the total, because every time it's small news somewhere about one person being killed. But the total is that big. And in this film, Miranda is considering this to be a continuity to the old-time Operation Condor, when Latin American left movements were faced by a secret war from the CIA and controlled, like a collaboration between major Western powers and local dictatorships to kill the leftist movements in the continent. The filmmaker here is in telling us that this is the same story, that we could even think of it as Operation Condor 2. The guest is one of the most surprisingly coherent artistic proposals that I have seen this year. We are on the border between Belarus and Poland, on the famous or infamous border there, with all the political tension between Western Europe and Russia being translated into this piece of land, and with thousands of refugees stuck on this border, not knowing how to go back or forth. And here, one of these refugees finds his way into a home that is in the middle of this borderline. And there are some beautiful people there who do not know anymore what's the right thing to do. I think this is a film that puts the humanity of each one of us in front of a true challenge of deciding, of trying to see what is the right thing to do. And that's what makes it very special, is that we can easily think we know what's the right thing to do, but we have to see that it also is a complex question. Lydia Zelovic brings a big surprise of a film. Home Game is a personal history film of a journalist, filmmaker, who was with her family a refugee from the former Yugoslavia to the Netherlands. The work of Lydia in this film shows us how different identity or nationalisms started to grow quickly and clash in Yugoslavia, turning the country into that terrible history of civil war, of clashes that ended the entire Yugoslavia as we all knew it, and started a new era. And in that violence of identities, they found a new life, they found new hope, and they felt much more comfortable in their new home in Amsterdam. And then they started seeing the same tendencies, the same threads come out with growing nationalism in the Netherlands. Over time, this film extends over years and years of the family's experience and lives. Over time, we see love and we see the clarity of saying, this is not going to end well. So, like Memories, Misha Vallejo's film is seemingly in the beginning a very classical family memory film, where the filmmaker brings to his grandmother loads of photographs and tries to examine the history of the family, a family that had what the filmmaker calls a missing father figure for generations, a family that had so much violence in its history. And the filmmaker wants to try and make peace, reconcile with that history through bringing these photos to his grandmother. While the photos stand for proof or a sense of evidence of concrete visibility of that history, reality is that the grandmother who is hopefully giving him this concrete grounding is having a growing Alzheimer. So the memory, the photos come face to face with the loss of memory, and this attempt for reconciliation turns into an absurd, no matter how meaningful, quest. I'm lost. Yeah, sorry. The clicker sometimes makes trouble. So, again, from the neighborhood, Luke Bowman's new film, The Propagandist, is an impressive account of the story of a collaborator, of a Dutch film producer and maker who collaborated with the Nazi occupation of the country, basically because he didn't care about anything but making films. So whoever is there in power, this man was willing to give them whatever they want, as long as they allow him to make film. This questioning of obsession is very interesting in the way that it examines what our campaign calls a complicity in a very interesting way. It also shows the history of Amsterdam that we did not know. How did Nazi cinema grow on the canals of Amsterdam in many ways that we do not necessarily know of? The film is built around audio recordings from a researcher who did many audio recordings trying to record that history via in a form of oral history recording in the 1960s. A project that was stopped at the end, but today is brought back by Luke Bowman as a way to tell this truly special story. Then I Alone takes us to the city where she grew up, and that is Jerusalem. In this film, Rule of Stone, Then I Alone, who is a celebrated film who came repeatedly to IDFA before with her previous films, is telling us a history that was truly marginalized or that we didn't know of. It is the history of how architects were brought in to change history in Jerusalem following the occupation in 1967. So when the Israeli authorities took over the entire city, the first thing that was done was to ask architects to come and make it into a new modern city that looks like their dreams. And there, Then I Alone today speaks to the most prominent of those architects of that time and tries to understand, did they really not understand that they were carrying on a massive plan of oppression, of colonization? Or were they really convinced that architecture is only about making beautiful buildings? It is a very courageous film that is also deeply sensitive and delicate, walking a very thin line with so much respect, but also with ethical and historical clarity that is, I think, is very unique. It is very special in our program presentation, but it is not special in the world of film. That situation of freedom of expression around the world, the control, the authoritarian approach towards film results in us being forced, together with a film team, to announce that we have an anonymous film in one of our main competitions. The film will be announced before the festival opens. But now it is too risky for the filmmakers that we do. This is new, that it makes it to international competition. But we have seen this over the years with the IDFA Bertha Fund. We have seen this with our IDFA Markets, the forum and Producers Connection. We have frequently and more every year. So filmmakers making important films being forced out of fear, out of lack of safety, out of true oppression, to try and keep their work a secret for as long as possible. We, I mean, if I say any more, I'll start going into the wrong. But it is a film that is truly beautiful. Now, Maciek Drigas is, I think, one of the greatest archival documentary film masters of our world today. In Trains, Drigas is digging up a massive amount of archives that show us the history of trains. And when we see the history of filming trains, we see that they carried history on the in their wagons. That is, to a large extent, more in Europe than anywhere else, that there are trains and they are filmed. But it is, in a way, a very interesting mobile metaphor or carrier vehicle where we see the First World War, the Second World War, the next, and the history of how transportation changed or even shaped our history. It is a tour de force. It is in many ways an amazing also editing film piece of cinema history. A Want in Her is a first film, too. Here, the filmmaker is inviting us very generously, very kindly, to a difficult family experience with a mother who's an alcoholic. It is a very sensitive film, a heartbreaking film, but also an impressively brave and kind examination of a mother-daughter relationship during or throughout such true difficulty of addiction. The first film in international competition is Najiba Nouri's Writing Hawa. This is a film that takes us again to Afghanistan. Here we will meet Hawa and her friends, a woman trying to turn a new page in her life, trying to learn, trying to move on, trying to reinvent her life, while the world doesn't agree. She wants to reinvent her life, but Taliban takes over. And then her entire effort, dream, and energy, her massive aspiration towards being freer and living differently is faced with this huge, monstrous force that doesn't want her to have that. It's truly a very strong piece of hard reality. Now, there's one more film of the international competition, and that is the film, the opening film of IDFA this year. And drum roll, and here we go. About a Hero is, I believe, one of the most serious, if not the first film that takes the questions of artificial intelligence seriously in a complex way, that is provoking, provocative, that is complex. This film comes from a track record with IDFA, and particularly with IDFA Doc Lab. So the work that led to this film has previously been part of DocLab's different programs, and eventually here we are. It's a story film, it's a fiction and a documentary at the same time. It is a film, it is a documentary film starring Vicky Krieps. It is a documentary film where the AI wrote a script. It is an AI that learned the world only through one person, which is everything written or said by Werner Herzog. So here we see an examination of reality, an examination of our relationship with technology. Here we see the complexity of the place of the artist. Here we do not see a winner. We do not see whether Herzog is greater or the AI. Here we only see this massive question mark in front of our faces about our future. Here we truly try to think together, what is it that we want out of this AI, this future that we were often scared of very much, that many people are promoting is our future today. And a film like About a Hero comes to tell us that there's so much more to whether it's good or bad. There's so much more to the limitations or the endless horizons that such work opens. We are very proud to welcome the team of About a Hero as our opening film, and we look forward to celebrating it with everybody. We look forward to thinking together about the future, also from this viewpoint. I want to finally thank the programming teams of IDFA. The film program was done and was only possible because of a huge number of program advisors that came together with our programming team and that worked through thousands and thousands of film entries, examining, discussing, thinking until a program is shaped. Our programming advisors, when programmers live anywhere between Taiwan and Brazil, we are very privileged, and it's only through technology that we can be so international and interconnected. The same goes for the team of DocLab. Gaspar has already thanked the team, but I will repeat that, and I will wait for everybody at IDFA 2024, where again, I promise that everybody will discover new things, that everybody will feel a little discomfort. Thank you.